I see you flexing everything on Instagram, bro.
Trying to fight the fight. Trying not to fall behind the
So
times.
you're doing North Americans.
Yeah.
Killing it, man.
Dave, I'll be honest with you. This guy was my inspiration when I first came to California to compete. Because you won the tournament the year before me.
94. You did
I won
the,
95. Yeah, 95.
Yeah, I remember when you did it.
You're the reason I did the Tournament of Champions.
Wow.
This guy right here.
I think Aaron Madden did it the year before me.
He did it, well, he did it the year I did, but he did seventh in my class.
That's right, same year.
But Dave had the crazy arms, man. Still got, let me see the arms.
Well, that's about all I got now.
You did next, man.
Still got the
He's looking for legs today.
I actually looked at the picture of you with flexing last week, and I'm like, dude, are those arms real?
Oh.
Still the same.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Gotta keep something, you know.
How old are you now?
52. Almost 53.
I'm 46
Try not to
yesterday.
count.
Alright guys, Dave Max 6, we're back at the Mecca, and today we have a very special guest on BBL by Broser. And this is actually, he is very special, this guy, because as you saw in the upcoming clip before this video, David Hughes has been a big inspiration for Jay's career. He saw him win the Night of Champion in 1994 in California, and then when Jay saw him win, he said, "This is the show I want to win in California next week, next year," and that's when he came. Dave, thanks for coming on the show, man. We appreciate you. Look,
Thanks for
you look, wow.
He looks insane.
So what's going on, man?
Just a week and a half out from the North America. You know, I did it last year, first time competing in 8 years. And like I was saying before, like I was coming back from a double hip surgery the year prior. So just decided to come out of retirement and just kind of challenge myself and see if I could bring my legs back. And didn't quite get where I wanted to be last year, but pretty close. But I've had a real good off season, and so I'm hoping for good things.
Man, you look great. And this is kind of funny, E, because we were actually working out the other day in the gym, and Dave was working at the same time as we did, and he kind of looked at us and he saw us do some of your Merlin move, and he started asking questions.
Right.
What are you guys are doing? And here's the reason why we have it. I said, you know what? He's competing. Let's get him on the show and show him a couple of your tricks and stuff. You know Dave for years. I mean, you follow bodybuilding forever and stuff.
Yeah.
How does that? How do you think he looks, and how's that for you to have him on the show today?
Well, it's really funny because, you know, I've been watching Dave over like the last couple of years, you know, here, and I noticed that he's, you know, one of the, you know, I don't want to say old timers, but he's been in the sport for a long time, and I noticed he's one of the guys who didn't let himself go. You know, you see a lot of old pros or amateurs who, you know, were big in the 80s and 90s and they don't look anything like it anymore, but he always looked good. But then I noticed just kind of recently, like over like the last 16 weeks or so, I'm like, look at him going, he's getting awfully hard looking and intense. And like, you could just see the difference in his arms and his forearms and his face. And I'm like, is he getting ready for something? You know, because, you know, I didn't know whether he was retired or maybe he's just doing it for himself. So yeah, so he spotted us in the gym the other day doing one of my shoulder movements that I do, and he tried it out and he loved it. He's like, oh, I really like this, I feel this. So I said, yeah, I got a whole bunch of movements that I can show you. And he's like, yeah, I'm always willing to learn new stuff. So listen, Dave's somebody who I've, you know, been following in the sport for many, many years. He's one of those top amateurs that never quite turned pro.
Like Edgar Fletcher.
Like Edgar
One of those
Fletcher,
guys,
Matt Mendenhall, Rory Liedemar, those guys, you know, they should have been pros, but they just didn't quite make it. And, you know, Dave is one of them. So to see him coming back now and trying to win his pro card is huge inspiration for me because I'm just about a year younger than him. And it's also just great to see that he's still in the game, still passionate about it, still loves bodybuilding, and still wants to, like I said to him before, put that cherry on the top of his career, you know, that long career, and come away with a pro card. So I really hope that he does it. And on today's show, actually, it's great to have him to continue our series on my different training programs. Today we're going to do ESPX2, which I'm going to explain more about the ins and out of it at the end of the show, but I'm going to take him through a workout, show him some of the principles, and you guys are going to see just how amazing he looks before the show.
Awesome. Big D, thanks for being with us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I look forward
All right.
Okay, so for this movement, the first movement in the ESPX2 program, we're focusing on the eccentric, that's the E. So we're using eccentric emphasis, and as you can see, Dave is going to be lowering the weight over about 4 to 5 full seconds. When he hits the bottom, he's going to come out of it like a spring and explode to the top. This puts a lot of tension and it causes a lot of fiber damage in the chest fibers, which actually is going to lead to muscle growth. And that explosive rep also as well ignites muscle growth. So you can see that control all the way down on every single rep. We're using a high incline press, and as long as he can get the chest under the bar, he can take much of the anterior deltoid out of it and focus on building that shelf in the upper chest, which is so important in bodybuilding competitions for side chest and other poses. Give it a shot. Okay, so the second exercise in the ESPX2 program is the S, which is stretch emphasis. So we're going to be looking to hold the stretch at the bottom of the rep for 4 to 5 full seconds. And what you'll see Dave doing, actually, you may not see him do it, but he's actually doing it in his mind at least, is he's trying to sort of arch his lower back and push his chest up high at the bottom of the rep to increase the stretch. We really, really want to put a lot of tension on the fibers at the bottom of the movement. Studies do show that if you could put a lot of tension under weight, that actually causes the fibers to split. Possibly hyperplasia could take place, and certainly a lot of trauma that has to be repaired and grown bigger and better. So we're using a bench press machine here, one of our favorite machines at Gold's Gym, and we're getting a huge chest pump. We're going to get somewhere about 8 to 10 reps. As you can see, on every single rep, he's making sure to hold that bottom for 4 to 5 seconds before muscling to the top. The whole movement is under full control, and the movement, the whole set is probably taking us about a minute or longer, a lot of time under tension for growth. Okay, so the third movement in the ESPX2 program is the P portion, which is peak contraction emphasis. So we're going to be looking to hold that peak contraction. We try to pick a movement where there is always tension at the end of the movement, such as a cable fly like this, to get a good peak contraction. We're going to hold that for about 4 to 5 seconds, which you can see Dave here doing now on this movement that is sort of like a hybrid. As you can see, we're using an incline bench set very, very high. So it's almost like a low cable crossover, but you're leaning back, so there's a little bit of a fly element in it as well. This is really, really great for contracting the upper chest fibers right under the clavicles. So he's not coming back too far. He's not overstretching. We don't want to pull on the bicep tendon, as you can see. So he's just coming back, getting a full range of motion without too much stretch. But as he comes to the top, you can see him holding and squeezing and doing something they call hypercontraction at the top, where he's not only holding the weight in place, but he's actually squeezing the chest as hard as he possibly can. So this, like I said, is the peak contraction emphasis. Give it a shot on this movement. Very unusual movement. Give it a try. Okay, so the final movement in our ESPX2 chest workout we're doing here, one of my favorite movements. It's sort of a seated chest press machine, but we angle our body to the side and we push across our chest. Gives you really, really strong contraction in the chest. You can see Dave doing here. And there's not going to be any hold. As you can see, he's kind of moving the weight like a piston. He's getting a full range of motion. He's trying to come back as far as he can and come across his chest, but he's not stopping anywhere in the rep like we did the other exercises. We just want to flush as much blood, healing blood and oxygen into the muscles, amino acids and everything else to heal the fibers now that we've damaged so much. And in this, we want to do about 21 to 25 reps. We want to keep the reps as high as possible, flush as much blood as possible, and this is a terrific movement to try for your chest.
All right, Big D, that's it. You've been officially initiated by one of your Merlin. So listen, I want to ask you a question, because this is actually a question that Jay asked a lot of people, including Big Morgan, who visited a video you with the Morgan asked, big French bodybuilder and stuff, and he was also, you've been training since the 80s, right?
Right.
So he wants to know how do you think the training has changed today? And you did something completely different than what you normally do, and probably what you did back in the past when you first started training heavy and all that stuff. So how does this kind of training compares to what was done back in the 80s and the 90s, and how would you explain this training versus something else you've done before?
Right. Well, for this training, it's a lot more like target, really trying to work on specific muscle angles, trying to find, different angles that might not have been, tapped into before. So you don't necessarily have to go at half as heavy, a lot of volume, just a lot less tension, on the joints, tendons, and ligaments. So definitely a lot safer, and just tapping into new, kind of territory that we never, touched base on before.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you first started training, you just like did everybody else, like really heavy compound movement, and I mean, we all kind of do the same thing, right?
Basically the same kind of thing as everybody else, you know.
But you told me you
squats.
just, and one of the reasons why you stopped competing back in 2010 is you had double hip replacement surgery. So that kind of just put you out of commission for a while.
Yeah, well, the double hip replacement was in 2017.
Oh yeah.
So 2010, I just quit because I was just pretty much done with it. I did it for 25 years.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of done with it and just kind of moving on to other aspects of my life. But that's why I got back into it, just from the double hip surgery, just to kind of challenge myself.
Yes.
Try to see what I could do. That's why this kind of training could really help out, like for me, for my leg development, because I can't do the same things I could do, you know, years ago.
Yeah.
You know. So.
I was at to train someone like his caliber today, because I know when we do the show a lot of time, you know, I demonstrate the episode or cam, or of course every time we shoot there's a bike coming in.
It's a motorcycle.
But you know, once in a while we get some, you know, prime people like, you know, like David, like, you know, Sergio Oliva, you know, a few pros before Toto's and all that stuff. We may actually get Natalia the weekend of the Olympia. So how is it to train, you know, these guys? And he must love this.
Yeah, well, I think it's awesome because most people don't train like this. Now, especially you take, you know, old school bodybuilders, and I come from the old school too. I've been doing it basically as long as Dave.
Yeah, you guys are both the same age,
around the same age. I'm a couple years. You got a couple years on me. It doesn't hurt the way he looks. And you know, back then it was, you know, much more about the basic movements. There weren't so many machines. But you know what? Just the way technology constantly evolves. Cell phones, you know, remember what the first cell phone picture looked like versus what the first cell phone looked like. But I mean the first time that there was a, you know, taking photographs on a cell phone, compare that picture to what it is today, like a professional camera, you know, car engines, every sport, you know, even from what the tennis rackets used to be like to what they are now, the NASCAR, everything evolves as we learn more, and training evolves too. Now I know that a lot of people who watch this show, you know, they're constantly complaining, oh, it's the basics, you need the basics. Yeah, the basics are important. You should have a foundation of basics, but it's not just the basics. It's not just lifting heavy weight. It's not just, you know, a certain amount of reps. There's so much more to consider that wasn't considered years ago, and you can't compare yourself and say something, throw something to me like, well, look at Ronnie Coleman, look how big he got, and he just lifted heavy, he didn't have, but you're not Ronnie Coleman, okay? You know, almost the entire planet isn't Ronnie Coleman. Most of the IFBB pros that you see out there, they're gonna grow by just looking at weights. Most of us are in the mid-range of genetic potential, and what worked for them isn't gonna work for us. Also, I wanna point out, God bless Ronnie, poor guy, he's had 14 back surgeries since he's not the same man anymore. Had he trained differently, could he still be competing? It's quite possible. So the point is that what I do is not meant to say, don't ever bench press again, don't ever squat again, don't ever deadlift again. No, you need a foundation of that, especially when you're younger. Those foundational movements are important for gaining strength, for learning technique, for getting in touch with the body, for building mass. But training somebody like Dave, who's been training for 30 years, his body's been doing the same thing over and over and over again. And he has said to me many times, he's like, I need new angles, I need new ideas, I need new ways to hit the muscle. And that's something that I specialize in. And not only are we going to tap into, like you mentioned before, tap into muscle fibers that possibly laid stagnant before, but we're also going to save his joints from wear and tear, because it's not about the weight on the bar. Your muscles have no clue whether the bar weighs 100 pounds or 500 pounds. The muscles know tension, and we are creating tension by holding the stretch, by holding the contraction, by doing slow negatives, slow positives. And by doing this, yes, we're able to cut the weight down in half, but that's meaningless because you're actually getting more tension on the muscle, less tension on the joints, so you could focus more on the action of the muscle, of the range of motion, what's happening from point A to point B, rather than just throwing a weight from point A to point B just to get that repetition. So training somebody like Dave is awesome for me because he's so advanced, but I believe, well, you know, he's at 52, he's going to be 53. I don't think he's maxed out. I think he's going to possibly win his pro card, and then I think he's got a few years ahead of him as a pro if he wants to do it, and he can improve in more. And we've even discussed it. Maybe I'm going to show him some new angles and some other body parts and improve his physique. So training somebody like Dave, now Natalia is a different example. She's very young. She's 22, 23. She's a freak of nature.
But literally in the last 15, 16 weeks that I've been working with her just on her training, she has another coach for diet, but just on her training, she's put on a whole ton of muscle. So these techniques work. You can't just say, oh, go old school, you got to do this. No, try them for yourself. And you can see there was one movement we were doing, a side lateral movement that you saw in the video, where we were using 7.5 pounds to 10 pounds to do the movement, and yet it was killing each one of us. You could see the pain on our face. So it's not about the weight. It's about
Is
the
that
way
a
you
mind
do it.
fuck? Do you have to take so much less weight than what you're used to, or you don't care?
No, it doesn't bother me at all.
That's good.
Yeah, not
so
at
you have
all.
an open mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just,
Just saying that I kind of close my eyes. It doesn't matter what the weight is. Like
Yeah.
we're saying, where the muscle doesn't recognize weight.
That's right.
Just tension.
And you obviously you look great, man. So D, about 10 days is
Yep,
your competition.
Yep, it's coming up a week and a half.
We're gonna wish you the best of luck, man. And the
Appreciate it.
next time we shoot, I have a good feeling that
You'll
we'll
be a
shoot with you pro. Yeah.
Hopefully.
I hope you come back on the show, man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you
All
guys
right.
inviting me.
Thank you so much, man.
That was a good time.
All right.
Hey guys, I just really want to quickly go over the program that we just did, which was ESPX2. Again, the first movement is eccentric emphasis, where we are lowering the weight over 45 seconds. The second movement is stretch emphasis, where we hold the midpoint or stretch of the movement for 45 seconds. And then the third portion, the third movement, is the peak contraction emphasis, where we hold the peak contraction for 45 seconds. And then the final movement is just X2, which means exponential, and that's where we're going for 21 to 25 reps in piston fashion. So basically all of these things in a nutshell are just meant to hit the muscles in different ways, to create a lot of tension, to create a long time under tension for the set, to make the muscles work differently so that they have to hold different parts of the rep. And every time we do something different to the muscles, we affect different muscle fibers, and we give the muscles different reasons to grow. Then of course we are finishing up with the high reps in this case, basically because we've traumatized the muscle tissue, we've damaged the muscle tissue. So what we're doing is basically feeding blood, oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and everything in our system into those damaged muscle fibers so we can start the recovery process. This is a great way to build muscle mass. Don't use the program every single week, just throw it into your program every couple of weeks. And we were doing about 2 sets per movement. I'd say 3 sets per movement is about as most as you would want to go. Keep the repetitions, somewhere between 6 on the low end, 15 on the high end. But that's not so important. What's more important is the principles themselves. So I hope that you guys enjoy ESPX2 and grow on it.